Welcome back to the studio, such as it is. A couple weeks ago, I was talking to my sister, and by talking, I mean texting. Uh, I rarely ever talk on the phone. Um, and, it's the first time I'd actually thought about it, but, uh, you know what? It's been, it's been a couple years since my mother passed away now. Like 22, 24 months. And it's just been a whirlwind of things. Um, I had bought this house with her on a Monday, and she passed away on a Friday. And so we were already committed at that point to moving forward. And so, I had to start building the studio here, but I also had to eliminate all of her stuff. And so she was a bit of a pack rat. So we had two storage units and a pod to eliminate. And then it was her taxes we had to do. And then I had to clean up the old house and get it ready to put on the market. But there was quite a bit more to do than I realized. And then there had two buildings, the carriage house and the house. The carriage house is what you all knew as the old studio. The long arm was in the downstairs, and my sewing space was in the upstairs, which you did sometimes see. That building was 1,650 square feet. Um, but this process has been going on for a while. But even before that, taking care of my mom, that was a couple years in itself. So um, I have to go back to 2021 when I personally had an exhibit in my local town of the angel quilts that I did. And just before that exhibit, I finished sewing up the angels. They were all handwork. That basically was really like the last sewing that I had done. So that's been 4.5 years. I might have done some little things for videos, uh, but nothing really comes to mind. But things I had to do to make a video. Um, the only thing, well, the reason I bring that up is in reference to my sister. Um, I was saying that after my mom passed away, one of the things that by nature, that I would have wanted to do, that basically I still would like to do, would be to retreat to my quilting studio to grieve for that process. And still, I haven't had that ability to do that. It's just been one thing after another of chaos. It's just like this enormous series of treadmills that you just never get off of. Well, today we signed the contract for the old house for the realtor, just to list it, and they're having professional photographers come out and take pictures. So that part of it, that story will be done. Hopefully, it will sell soon. But now I can get more focused on finishing this process. But as that's gone on, this has just gotten more and more of a mess. So it'll probably take 2 weeks just to straighten this up. And I'll tell you a funny story. There is the person that I want to do the drywall, because he's so spectacular at doing drywall, has been incarcerated for like the last 4 or 5 months. Not everyone that does incredible work is a perfect human being. So he's supposedly like free this month. So maybe the timing worked out really well. We'll see. But I can't wait to see his finished work in here. But the only thing that I have hand sewn, really, aside from sleeves on the antique quilts, the red and green quilts, Um, and, those really don't count, do they? The only thing that I've sewn is this quilt top, and it's angels, of course. And the funny thing is that it's been spread out over 4.5 years, and so I almost have no memory of doing it. I have no singular collective memory of doing it. I have no cohesive memory of doing it. It is something that I saw on my Facebook in one of the quilting groups I'm in. And I was so inspired by the woman who made it on my Facebook group. She did it in very bright kaf fabrics and batiks. And I only saw it as she was quilting it. She was quilting each block in a different quilting pattern. It was stunning. And so, of course, people were asking what the pattern was. It is angels, and it's a quilt by Susan Garman, who has passed away. And at first, her children couldn't locate the pattern. And so they had got back to me several months after I requested the pattern, and they sent me, I paid for, and they sent me this pattern, which is called the Angel Quilt, which is not this quilt. It is a Susan Garman Angel Quilt pattern, but it is irregular sized blocks with stars in the middle, which I went ahead and put aside, and I'll do this one next. I have a lot of the template pieces cut out for it. But then a few months after I had gotten that one, they messaged me back and said, oh, wait, we think we found the one that you actually wanted. And so then I went ahead and paid for that one, and they shipped it out. And so I started doing that one as well, since that was the one I actually wanted. You all know that I like angels, so this was just something simple. It was I call these folk art patterns. Other people may have a different take on what kind of pattern it is. Maybe they don't call it folk art. But I like using a variety of beige, different backgrounds for each block. For me, whenever you can use more fabric, different fabric, that's always a plus. But when I started, I realized I didn't have that many beige batik fabrics. So, this was several years ago. So, of course, that set me on a little tangent of buying more beige background batiks. And I don't mind if some of them are a little bit louder than others. I just love that. Now I have enough beige background fabrics to cover the White House. But I really like this. I have a lot of batik fabric. I've always liked batik. And I have a lot of kaf fabric, even though I didn't really like kaf in the beginning. I had come from that period of loving vintage florals like Robin Pandolph, and then, Three Sisters and French General and those things. So kaf fabric was a little garish to me at the beginning. Once I started getting all the blocks finished, really I didn't finish these blocks until I had moved in here. And I was so close, I cleared a space at the dining room table and finished the last couple little things. There really weren't that many things left to do. But it needed some hand embroidery on it. And I'm really terrible at hand embroidery, which is sad for me because I used to work with a couple women, Edith and Lynn, who were just beautiful, did beautiful, beautiful hand embroidery work. And if I had paid attention in school, like I should have, I also would be good because that was years ago. But I tried doing hand embroidery on here, and it just wasn't working. Um, like everything was bunching up, and I couldn't get anything to work right. Um, but then I bought Sue Spargo's book on embroidery. Um, that was one thing that helped, finding out what needle and thread weight she used. I used pearl cotton thread on here for the embroidery, but I also I backed every block and even the sashing with woven fusible. It's the same kind of thing that you would use for the backing of a t-shirt quilt. I hate t-shirt quilts, by the way, because it makes the end up being stiff. Now, this is also a little bit on the stiffer side, but it's a wall quilt. It's not going to be something I expect anybody to cuddle up with in bed. But that made all the difference. Now, the woven fusible idea was not something that was in a book, as far as I know. But stabilizing the blocks did make the stitching a lot easier to do. My stitching is not top notch, certainly not like Lynn and Edith. But I've had some fun looking through the books and watching videos on YouTube and doing some of the stitches. My friend Marguerite also is an incredible hand stitcher. She is a big fan of Sue Spargo, and she has the book, and that's where I first got the idea to get the book. And she's done several of her block of the months where they do the wool applique. One of my favorite little things that Marguerite showed me how to do is called a drizzle stitch, and I used it to do these little crazy hairs on the angel's head. So that's one of my favorite little stitches now. There is a little bit of ultra suede in here on the little tiny flowers that are really kind of too small to want to needle turn. But needle turn is how traditionally I do applique. But I don't have a collective memory of doing this. It was spread out of such a long period of time. Now I'm going to put a cornerstone on each of the four corners of this top, and I have one sashing fabric that is also a beige but slightly darker than these, and I will use this same streaking star idea to go down the four sides, and then it will get a much wider border. It will either get a bright batik to close it all in, or it will get another beige, slightly darker, that could be used to have some quilting. It also could possibly have some kind of bias vine going around it with some leaves or hearts, because there are several places where hearts are used in the quilt. There's also stars used several times, which is kind of why the stars, I use those stars. The stars aren't in the pattern, and also the quilt is not set in landscape. But whenever I do a wall quilt, I prefer this landscape setting, mostly because walls, like if you have a sofa or a chair or a piece of furniture, it usually blocks the bottom of a quilt. If you have a bed and you want to hang something behind the bed, a portrait quilt is going to hang mostly behind the bed. A landscape quilt, you have a better chance of it hanging above the headboard than you do a portrait quilt. So I have always liked my applique quilts to be in landscape instead of portrait mode. Uh, but this is like my one big hurrah for the last 4.5 years. I've been a part of a strip club. I think I've told you that had cut a bunch of strips for to go to this class in my guild, but my guild members were jibing me, asking me why I hadn't really been bringing any samples. And it kind of caught me off guard because it just made me think about my mom and um, everything that's happened uh, since then to bring me up to today, and why I still haven't been able to sit and sew. You know, I keep trying to start something, and um, this isn't the environment really. Uh, I've tried to make a little sewing place, uh, but it just isn't. It isn't conducive to creativity. But now that I can focus on one place, I'm hoping that I'm very seriously hoping that things will be progressing a little faster than having two places to focus on. Um, but I wanted to show you this one thing that I have done, and the only block that I think is the odd one is this one. Um, I almost was tempted to take it out and redo it. This was the first block, and I had started um, thinking I was just going to use bright fabric. This has the only batik in here is the balloon. Um, it has neither batiks nor cave fabric in it, so it really is the odd block. But I'm not one for redoing things. Um, Generally speaking, if I always feel like if you could move forward with something, if a mistake isn't so big that it doesn't prevent you from moving forward, then I like to learn from it and move forward. I don't have time to keep redoing the same thing over and over. I have too many things to do, um, so it doesn't bother me that much. But I just have a lot more things I want to do. I keep starting cutting things up for like kind of kits for myself for when things do settle down. Uh, and I just have to make really good notes about what I planned, because it's funny how the mind plays tricks. I had um, I had a quilt that I made many years ago. It was just half square triangles with circles in it, and I used the circles were all Oriental fabric. Uh, you know, the chrysanthemum flowers and Mount Fuji and the geisha girls and dragons and all of those motifs. And then the backgrounds in my mind were like stripes and plaids and solids. And so I was going to reproduce that kind of using the tilde fabrics. And so I was going to use the geometrics and the solids and the chambrays in the background, and then the florals as the circles. And so the other day I was hanging quilts at the old house for the staging, and I found that quilt, not to use for staging, but looking for other things. And that wasn't the way that the quilt was made at all. Um, there was florals and geometrics and everything in the background. I mean, it was all just mixed up. And it's funny how my mind had totally misrepresented what the quilt actually was. So I'm kind of glad I found it before I started cutting anything. Anyway, this is it for today. I just wanted to show you my one little project that I've actually done, that I actually wanted to do, and it's taken about 4.5 years to do it. But I'll be happy when it gets done. It is an angel quilt, and so I am looking forward to its completion. And it's not very big. The woman that I was first inspired by did quilting on hers, hand quilting, and so I don't know. I might even do my quilt in some big stitching, because Jo Walters is a dear friend of mine, and she invented big stitching, and this isn't so big. So she did show me how to do that. So that might happen. It might be a combination of machine quilting and big stitching. So we'll have to live and see. I'll have to see how hard it is to stitch through the woven fusible, and see if I curse myself. But it may be something. Maybe something. Anyway, that's it for me today. Thanks for stopping in. Until next time, keep piecing it together.